Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Hi, Dawn. Welcome back. Nice to see you
Hi,
again.
Sean.
And thanks for listening to me rant for the last sort of 10 minutes. Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's going well. Sort of picking up, getting into the musical busy season now, it seems, which
Oh,
is
really?
refreshing because it's been, yeah, actually. I've got some shows lined up. I've got some releases coming out and
Oh, cool.
sort of looking at building up a bit of a tour for the coming months. So
Okay.
yeah, looks like it's picking up pace, which is lovely.
Cool. And where are you planning to tour?
Coming to Joburg and Pretoria, Sean.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You did mention. So you're not going to go to New York and London and Madrid? No, not yet.
I figured I might as well like start at home first and kind
All
of
right. Spread your
spread my
wings.
wings
Yeah, yeah.
so,
A later
and
stage.
then I'll stretch out a little further after that.
Sure, sure. So yeah, Joburg, Pretoria. You're from Natal. I mean, what are you expecting exactly? Who are you doing the gigs through?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm still lining up some venues. I've had some
Hmm.
positive responses from a few really lovely venues in Joburg and one in Pretoria. So I'm not going to give too much away just yet until I've tied it all down.
Sure.
We spoke last time, the last podcast episode we did, we spoke about Concerts SA. So I'm also applying for their mobility fund to try and get some sort of funding, which will make it just that much easier to do these sorts of things.
Cool.
So yeah, we'll sort of that will affect which venues I end up playing because they do
Sure.
require venues to be like SAMRO registered and most venues in this country don't really want to be SAMRO registered, so there's a little bit of like, yeah,
Well, it would
it's
help
gonna
if Summer
that's
actually
the
paid
awkward bit.
musicians.
It would, and
Mm,
that's a bit of a contradict, like I don't know, it's a bit of a thing because I personally feel like that, like.
mm,
Damn, it would be nice if SAMRO paid musicians. Because I mean, I know for me, I've gone and said, well, I've played X amount of songs, and they've gone, oh, we don't have any record of that. Could you give us a spreadsheet? So I'm
mm.
like, cool, SAMRO, here's a 7-page spreadsheet of my radio plays. And then they
Yeah,
kind of go, oh, well, we only play for like, certain things. We don't really pay for all of those things. And
yeah,
I'm like, are you
yeah,
kidding me? Like
yeah.
that sucks.
You know what's
Um,
going on though? Conspiracy theory time. No, there's ghost musos who just
yeah,
receiving payments. You know that's going on,
yeah,
and it's South Africa. Well, considering how many ghost people musicians were paid off their what you call it the arts national arts, that all these weird and wonderful names of people that didn't exist. So money dish
yeah,
going out to these musicians and
yeah.
artists that didn't exist from the council. So there's no way Samurai aren't doing that. We all know it's the country we live in. So it's a
Well, I mean,
shame.
you say this though, like I've chatted to artists in Ireland, for example. I got a friend who also loads of radio plays globally, and she's
Mhm.
having the exact same issue with the Irish version of Samurai,
Sure.
where she's contacting them and going, "Well, these are my radio plays," and they're going, "Yeah, no, sorry,
That
no,
doesn't work.
don't pay
Yeah.
for those."
Yeah, we need to pay you
And it's
to
quite an interest,
you got you two
yeah,
money to
and
burn.
it's quite an interesting thing because they kind of say, well, oh, well, we don't pay for like online radio or we don't pay for community radio.
Yeah.
And then if you actually get hold of those radio stations themselves,
Hmm.
a lot of those radio stations are getting sponsorships and funding, and they are specifically using that to pay for royalties that then aren't being paid out, which is a that's where the conflict sort of starts to come in. You
Yeah.
go, well, the radio station said they're paying,
Mm.
and they're paying it towards royalties. And what are you guys then doing with it? So, yeah, I think
Mm.
there is something going on. However, I've
Sure.
also then spoken to other musicians who have turned around and told me they love Samurai. Samurai's amazing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I guess there's a certain element. I was talking to someone about Dan Corder the other day. The sort of political. I don't know what he's a comedian, but kind of political spokesman or analytical guy. Anyway, he's on SABC. He was in 5FM. Then he had his own show on SABC and stuff like that. And now he's on E News. And I'm just like,
Okay.
ginger haired, blue eyes, and you're like, do BE laws not apply to Dan Corder? Exactly. Like, so who does Dan Corder know that the rest of us don't? And I think there's an element to that. I think, would you say South African music's quite, you got to be connected. I think maybe, does that help? 'Cause it seems a
Yeah,
bit
I think probably.
mafioso in a few ways, maybe, sort of
Yeah,
go,
and maybe if you're big enough to make a noise that would attract unwanted attention, perhaps
"Mm,
then you are more likely to be paid what you're owed and therefore kept a little more docile,
yeah,
perhaps. I mean, I'm
sure.
speculating. It's absolute speculation here. I
Mm,
have no proof of this whatsoever, but
yeah,
I am speculating that there's a little bit of that going down. If you've
yeah.
got a following of sort of between 50 and 50,000 and sort of like a couple of 100,000 followers, if you start saying, well, hey, where's my money? There's a lot of people going, dude, why are you not paying my favorite artist?
Mm,
Whereas if you're
yeah.
like me and you're sitting there with like 5 or 6,000 followers across your platforms, you're not really clipping that much clout.
Yeah, I think as well, if you're not getting the streams and stuff like that, then, but I get that. But again, if you've got evidence of radio play, they need to pay you. Your
Yeah,
your music's being exploited, and you need to be paid. It's as simple. It's like,
yeah.
take the Liam Jacobs now is talking to all the sports and art foundations and that, asking where they're, but just looking at their budgets and doing audits and so Parliament,
Mm,
and these guys don't turn up to. So I forgot what organization it was. Could it be netball or athletics or art, whatever? But they've turned up. And M. Jacobs is asking them about payments and that, and they said, "What's this money for?" And they said, "Oh, this money's for it's people to come to Parliament." And I was like, "You're being paid to be here." They're like, "Yeah, but you get a salary for that." No, no, no. This is when we come to Parliament, you need that we get paid for that as well. So, but you get a salary, it's the people who are keeping the money just, won't leave the house, won't get out of bed unless they get paid extra money. So, I think, that's
mm,
there's elements of this where, particularly, I think we've got a pretty good music industry here, for
yeah,
third world anyway. And I think it's good enough to hide to tell everyone that's a bad industry, and but then there's no money, and then sort of people don't. You just
yeah.
I don't. I just now, but when I was a musician, I just expected not never to get paid. I got to the point. It's one of the reasons I was just
Pizza
like,
and beer,
yeah,
Sean.
yeah,
It's
yeah. I
enough
was
for
like,
us to live off,
yeah, yeah,
really.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this cheeseburger is amazing. Excellent. I'll put that in my petrol tank now. But yeah, I got the point. But the way I did look at it, and I still look at it like, all right, how many people did I bring in today? Okay, no, no, no. All right, a handful. All right.
Mm.
So there's element, but for me, that's alive. The difference is, so going, as you said, Dawn's going with her evidence of being played, like, where's my cash? When thing I've registered, you spoke, this is what you're, why am I not being paid? And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, but Ferraris and Mercs and BMs don't pay for themselves, do they, Dawn? You got to get that money
No,
somewhere.
I mean it's a very, very true thing. And one day, maybe when I'm driving one of those fancy ass vehicles, I'll be the person behind
Yeah,
the scenes. But I hope I will have learned my lesson from growing from
yeah,
the grassroots up, not
sure.
to be a complete and utter
Mm,
ass, for lack of
yeah.
a better word.
Well, maybe
But
you need a job at
yeah,
Samurai. Okay, go ahead. Cut
maybe
the
I can
music.
help them get venues to register,
Uh,
some like customer relations.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But no,
exactly.
I don't think I'd want that job particularly. But what I can say though is that going through this experience and obviously being a musician who markets my own music
Hmm.
and having met these challenges along the way has obviously caused me to search for solutions because I'm
Hmm.
not one of those people that's just going to sit there and moan about it. I'm actually going to do something about it. So
Sure.
aside from typing out a 7-page spreadsheet of radio plays, um, there are organizations that do keep track of radio plays globally, and obviously most of them are paid services. But if you are finding yourself as a musician in a situation where you're getting a lot of radio plays, it is worth then investing in those services. And then you've got a
Mm.
global record of those radio plays, and it's not one then that can be argued. So
Mm.
then, like Samro has to then, or your music body, wherever you are in the world, has to then kind of go, okay, cool, you've got evidence, statistical proof, and we owe you X amount. And I know the Kifness did that here in South Africa.
Yeah.
He used Radio Monitor, and they came back and said, well, they told you had 1,700 plays. It's actually more like, 17,000 plays or whatever it was
Yeah.
across the radio station, and sort of upped his income of royalties from a couple of thousand rand to tens of thousands. So he is one of the examples of how that works.
Yeah, I mean
And then
they didn't, so the is it Samra owed him like quarter of a million rand or something. It was, I mean, it was a substantial amount of money.
yeah,
Is that right?
maybe not quite that much, but it was pretty close to that. It
Okay.
was certainly a lot more than they'd paid him. And he did write a whole like blog article
I
about it.
remember it very
And
well.
kudos to him. He also
Mm.
included the email addresses of the people he got hold of in Samro. So you could just, if you read his blog, you can actually just go and email them directly, which is what I did. I basically read
Mm.
through his story and went, oh, I'm not getting any response from customer service when I say, hey, you guys perhaps owe me some acknowledgement of these radio plays. So I
Mm.
just emailed the person he emailed and very quickly got a response.
Mm.
So I think there is like knowledge sharing that certainly helps this industry to maintain a little
Yeah,
more integrity, hopefully.
sure, sure.
Um, and then the other thing is like on an international level, like for me here in South Africa, there's maybe a handful of radio stations locally that play my music. I get a lot more of my radio plays from sort of the UK, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, Canada, and the USA. Those are like my main sort of top seven countries that really play my songs. So you do have Sound Exchange, which is an international service which
Yep.
monitors radio plays and distributes royalties. So I've registered now with Sound Exchange. So in a couple of months, hopefully, I'll have an idea of how they work and how consistent they are with paying out for international radio plays. Because musicians that I've spoken to locally have sort of said Samro only pays out for international plays after 2 years, whereas Sound Exchange is paying depending on your quantity of royalties that you earn, either monthly or quarterly.
Hmm.
So it's going to be an interesting one to compare and see which of these rights bodies are actually functioning, and then which ones to
Mm.
really support and to enroll with, I suppose.
Sure, sure. They're going to have to come up with some sort of pack because it's just, um, how many great artists they're losing every year because their own jobs are in jeopardy, their own industries in jeopardy. There's
Yeah,
only so many sort of poppy Britney Spears type artists that are gonna carry the industry. You need a variety, and that's the beauty of art. You've got to, is you can cater for everyone and sort of go, but these people need to get paid, particularly if the stuff their work gets exploited. And obviously, for those that don't know, exploitation of music or art is just if someone uses your work to make money. That's it. So it's not the
yeah.
negative of that, as in we're tying it up and beating it. We're making it work in the coal mines,
I
but
mean,
it's actually
it's the like, yeah, I suppose it's the intellectual property of version of tying it up and beating it. You're tying up and beating my intellectual property, guys, you know,
yeah. Go pick the millies.
and
There you
not in
go.
a fun
Yeah.
way.
No, exactly. Yeah, not the fun tie up. No, exactly. So yeah, it's an interesting time. And again, what follows in why this is so important that people do, and that's that, people like Samra and that really need to get their act together because their jobs are on the line if they don't start doing their jobs properly. Because at some point, how many great musicians, for example, or artists are going over to like graphic design, for example, to go do, or
Yeah,
advertising or marketing, and those talents are going there, and that's fine. People got to eat and stuff, but it's they're going leave music or leave art or whatever, and again, and
yeah,
and they're literally destroying their own industry by doing this. There's no
absolutely.
longevity, you know what I mean? So it's really up to them to get their act together and just start paying
Yeah,
because musicians don't have physical things to sell anymore. How many t-shirts, how many like you did those gorgeous bands we spoke in the last thing, so go with the
yeah,
with the USB stick in, with the memory stick and and that's only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
We need that physical thing back, and I think copyright sort of copyright payments from radio and stuff is it. Maybe.
And I mean, the other thing is that with digital distribution these days, there's no necessity specifically for artists to register with Samra in particular. Like, yes, there's certain radio stations with which request a SAMRO code when you're
Hmm.
submitting,
Yep.
but most of them don't necessarily need it. They need an ISRC code, and your ISRC code you're getting through your digital distributor anyway.
Hmm.
And if you're then registered with an international rights holding organization or rights collective
Hmm.
organization like Sound Exchange, who is collecting royalties for you anyway,
Yep.
what's the obligation for you to then pay a membership fee to SAMRO? Why
Mm.
would you do that if they're not doing anything for you and they're not coming back with royalty payments and they're not keeping accurate records of it?
Mm.
Why would you bother? You
Yeah.
know?
They're not, and
So I
they're not
think
doing
that
their jobs. They're not doing their jobs. They're just not bothering. They're probably sitting there, as I said, creating ghost accounts and answering the phone to Dawn every day. Hey, Dawn, yeah, sorry, we don't pay for that. Better luck next time. Bye, love you, bye, bye. Put the phone down on you, and then,
Uh, yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously, again, speculation for days, but it
mm,
seems to be a more commonly discussed thing that they're not doing their jobs and that they are. It's only
mm,
like a very small handful of musicians who come back and say, wow, we love Samurai. They've really done a good thing for us.
mm,
Those seem to be fewer and far between. And I
sure,
think that, you know, like advertising, talk is word of mouth, still the best form of advertising. So if people are speaking about you in a positive light, it'll show up. But if you're not
sure.
doing your jobs and you're being spoken about negatively, that's going to be what people know of you. So,
Mm.
yeah, Summer, rise to the occasion, guys. Come,
Yeah,
up
I
the
mean,
ante. Be better.
yeah, I'll be
Be
better,
better.
Samro. Yeah, yeah. It's just not jobs for
Yeah.
friends, I think. Any,
And I mean,
anything.
not just Summer, like international organizations that are doing the same thing. I know for a fact that my friend is having very similar issues, like I said, in Ireland. So, I mean, come on, guys. Like
Mm.
on a global level, if you're a government authorized like rights organization who's collecting money, like do a good job of it, please,
Mm.
because you're keeping an industry afloat or you're sinking the ship.
Mm.
Um, and I
Yeah.
mean, then you look at in South Africa, it's also confusing because we've got SAMRO, we've got SAMPRO, we've got all these different acronyms that are connected with all sorts of different rights
Mm.
collection capacities. And you kind of left going
Mm.
like, sort of where's the guide to who I'm supposed to register with? There should be like a
Mm.
list that I can just go and say, okay, I got to register with like 5 different organizations, and that then gives me the right to collect my royalties from
Sure.
everything I possibly could,
Do you think it's
and
I've actually haven't registered with any of these guys. I've needed to. So what's that process like, Dawn? Is it extremely difficult? Is it easy? I mean, what's the
it's a
deal?
bit of a slip, but like once you're registered, then like with Samro, for example, you can then kind of go and load your own notifications. Like when you create a new song, you've recorded it, you've got all the metadata for it, you can now go ahead and like log a new notice of work into the website, and you can put in anyone who's collaborated on that. You can do rights distribution percentages and all of that through their portal, which is fairly user friendly and
Hmm.
functional.
Okay,
I
it's
have
gonna act an
found that
online
there's
thing.
yeah, yeah. And then
Oh.
after that point, it's fairly simple. But if you actually have an issue where you found that your rights distribution hasn't come through correctly, like I know, for example, on my second album, I distributed the percentages of rights to any musician who collaborated with me,
Hmm.
and none of that shows up on the other musician's account. But when I go and look at it on my account, it says, yeah, 5% or 10% to so and so and 10% to so and so. But when I then ask those musicians to verify on their side that that has been logged and registered as work they've participated on, it doesn't show up at all.
Okay.
So there's definitely that. Then from my side, that makes me ask, cool, well, there's 25% of each song that I've allocated to different musicians that isn't coming through to them. So where is it going then? And that's also where you tend to say, like, hang on a second. Like, unless we're verifying with each and every musician who we work with, did you get your 10%?
Mm. Yeah.
Then where's that going?
So
you
maybe,
know?
I'm going. So for me, it's just I pretty much know what's happening there. But do you need to earn a certain amount before they start paying you? How does that work? Do you have to
Yeah,
like
so you
say
you need
do a ten
they've got
thousand
different.
rand and then they start giving you?
Not quite as much as that. It's actually fairly minimal. You have to earn, I
Mm.
think, $100 or $250 before they start
Oh,
upgrading your membership tier. The Samura's got like
oh,
three tiers of
of course
membership.
they do.
And
Of
if
course they do.
you, yeah, obviously, right? It's an elitist system. So
Yeah.
once you're higher up in the membership tier, you now have access to a pension fund, like glowing things like that. The musicians don't even know exist. You
Mm,
have access to funding for original works. You have access to funding for recording projects or music videos.
hmm.
But until you have earned 100 rand, or at least until they've acknowledged you've earned 100 rand in royalties off a song or off your music as a whole, they won't push you up a tier. So you can't apply for funding. You can't gain access to the pension fund. So for someone like me, who definitely is representing music in this country on a global scale, my music is being played on radio stations literally around the world. And then they're turning around and telling me, sorry, you don't qualify for $100 of royalties. So you can't actually apply for funding to record your next album to promote South African music. So I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a that seems flawed. Um, then of course there's other organizations like Sampra. Sampra has got a much more expensive membership fee that you've got to pay in annually. But Sampra then is responsible for like your SAMA awards. And if you are then applying to be submitted to get a SAMA award, you
Yeah.
pay less if you're a Sampra member. If you're not a member of Sampra and you go and submit to pay to like participate at get your music sort of looked at for a SAMA award, you end up paying sort of almost 5,000 Rand an entry.
Yeah.
So, all of these musicians that are sort of award nominated, they've
Mm.
paid for those nominations. They've paid to be part of those award ceremonies, which I also find to be quite sort of debilitating,
Well, it's
especially in
pointless.
an industry. Yeah, I mean, like, where's the value then? And to be honest, you can do the same thing basically with like your Oscars and your Grammys. It's all
Mm.
in order to be nominated for a Grammy, you've got to be part of a specific membership group
Mm.
where you're paying for your nomination. You're paying to be a member of that council in order to have your work even considered. It's not like they look at worldwide work or South African wide work in the case of the Samas and go, who really is making an impact?
Mm.
No, they go, who paid the 4,000 Rand entry? And then they look at amongst those small handful of people who can afford that, oh, who's making an impact? And
Right.
that seems just very one-sided and limiting. And, it makes you sort of value that award nomination when you see it next to someone's name, when you know that that's how the process works. You kind of go, well, I'm really happy for you, dude, that you could afford to pay for it. Like, that's nice. I hope you really deserved it too.
Yeah.
Um,
I hope it works
so
out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
hope
and
it was worth the
again,
investment.
but it comes back to the thing, Dawn. How many amazing artists are we losing, every year because of stuff like this? It's just,
Yeah,
it's not that everyone deserves money, and no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need a system. It's kind of like the currents, like what the BE should have been. The BE's, the whole point of BE was to create a platform for the poor and the working class to be able to get into the middle class through education and then sort of opportunities and work. That was the point, but instead they've just sort of removed several got 1 trillion rand or something around 100 different people. That's basically the
yeah,
BE's become, and for me I think a lot of these sort of performance rights and all that sort of Sampro and all that are probably in that same sort of frame of mind. And the other problem is coming to the sort of classism of it, like you said, people are paying for a nomination, then that
mm,
means the poor can't get into art. The poor can't, you know what I mean? If you don't have that sort of sponsor or that sort of extra money to get in, and do these things. I mean, register. Do you have to pay for registration for Samurai and Sambro?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Why?
Samrose is I
Why?
think 100 or 150 rand a year. It
Mhm.
used to be free. When
Yeah.
I submitted, it was a free thing. And because I submitted prior to it being a paid service, I still don't pay for it,
Yeah.
which is cool. That's great. One bonus. But I get that Samro needs to be able to pay employees, right? I understand that. So I think a nominal membership fee is something you could come to terms with if it were fair. Because Samro's like 100 or 150 bucks. That like pays for the paperwork, dude. Like I'm okay with
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
But when you're charging someone sort of a couple of thousand rand a year to be part of your organization in order for you to collect money that they've earned off their art,
Mhm.
this is when it now becomes a problem because
Cool.
you are also gaining a percentage of their royalties
Mhm.
for the service that you offer. So you're earning money off them and you're asking them to pay you to do that. And that's where you start to go like, whoa, hold the bus.
Bad service.
Something
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
adding up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially in a day and age when musicians are not, you know, even if you have hundreds of radio players, unless it is with fully commercial stations, they're not acknowledging them as sort of plays that would earn you royalties anyway,
So
you know?
how
And
would, because I mean, these, listen, these, as you said, these organizations do need to make money. They got salaries to pay, rent, water,
absolutely.
whatever. So how did they go around it? I mean, really, for me, the obvious thing is that free registration, but then charge a sort of a percentage on collections. All right, so
Yeah,
this it there. So whatever we collect, we take whatever, 5%, 10%, 20%,
absolutely.
whatever, like a management fee and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Which is how Sound Exchange works,
yeah.
interestingly enough. That's so, it's a USA based company with
Mm,
they've got sort of commitments from countries around the world to have the right to collect royalties. And they're working exactly like that off a percentage based system. So if they're not having to do the work for you because you're not actually pushing your music,
mhm,
then they don't earn anything off you.
yeah.
But they're not having to do the work for you.
Mhm,
Whereas if you are pushing your music and they are having to keep a tab on it and track down those royalties, then they're charging you a percentage.
mm,
But then that's fair trade, right? And we can all come to terms with that kind of trade.
mm. I think that's a great thing. You got someone, and it's in their interest to make sure they find every cent. To
Absolutely.
do it. For me, it's motivation, it's going, and I think that's a good deal. I essentially,
Yeah.
but charging people, for me, it just seems you got to pay this yearly fee, and then your your file gets put in a little cupboard or digital space, and it stays there, and then you phone up now and again, and they go, "Oh, hi, we'll get back to you," put the phone
Yeah.
down, and yeah, I don't know, it's just keeping people honest. I've heard stories, about various organizations. Danny Jordan's currently in the press now. He's being interviewed, sort of by Liam Jacobs. I'll bring his name up again, but like, so they're talking about sort of general, sort of the sports and arts, the expenses, what's going
Mm,
on, and they're sort of inquiring on, sort of Danny going to the World Cup in Qatar, where South Africa doesn't even have a team, and he's doing it all on the
yeah.
taxpayer. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're there 30 days, Danny. What are you doing? Like, what for? What we got? Did you have meetings? What,
Yeah.
for a team that wasn't even there? Like, why are you there? So is it
Yeah.
there? I need to finish watching all of that. I'm sure maybe he explained himself, but my point isn't that he was there. My point is there's just this massive, almost thing regarding, sort of any sort of government institution, and particularly the arts, it seems, and sport and art,
Mm.
sort of in that same sort of hobby category,
Leisure category almost,
yeah, okay, it's a hobby. You sit there like, so people have told me, like, as I told you, I've got a degree to music, but it's the music degree. So but that's the attitude, and
Yeah.
it's the same. I think people are like, well, why don't you get a real job, or why don't you go?
Mm.
And meanwhile, these people are earning money. Well, not all of them, but there are people in sporting who should be earning money, and there's just all this red tape, it seems, in getting in the
Mm.
way of, sort of letting someone earn a living. And I think particularly given the amount of poverty and sort of poor, the poor and the working class we have in South Africa, art is like an obvious choice. If you can't find work, how many people do you know
You
have
make
picked?
art.
Yeah, so how many people pick to start drawing pictures, making sculptures to sell, or they learn the guitar, or they try to start covers band, and that people are turning
Yeah.
to art now to make a living because there is no work, and when they do find a
And
work,
the
it's like
huge thing,
8K a month, you know.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, the huge thing is that we have in this country a law against busking,
Hmm.
right? It's actually illegal. If you didn't know, now you
No,
do. It's
okay.
illegal to busk in this country. Whereas globally, especially in Europe, there's a massive tradition around busking and a huge amount of, students and up and coming sort of people who haven't quite found their place in the working class yet that make a living off busking. And it's
Hmm.
accepted. You can't go into a tube station in London without hearing somebody playing something or singing something. And for everyone else who's trudging on their day to day dreary existence, it is a bright moment of hope in an otherwise dull and uninteresting day that they have
Hmm.
is perhaps they get to hear a violinist in the tube station. Perhaps they get to hear a piece of music that makes their soul come alive. So busking certainly has a purpose when it comes to mental health in the
Hmm.
world as a whole
Sure.
and cultural development. And street performance has always been like that. And in a country like Africa, South
Mm,
Africa, but in Africa as a whole,
mm,
we are an incredibly colorful, multinational collective of people who are all very creative and exuberant and colorful. And yet we can't go out onto a street and express that through art and drama and performance without it actually being against the law.
mm. Okay.
And that is like that's quite a hectic thing. So even from literally the ground up, it's made difficult for art to be a viable stream of income. They would rather you were begging at a robot than that you were playing your guitar at the same robot.
Sure.
Where at least
Sure.
if you're playing your guitar, you're doing something. And someone, if they gift you something in exchange, has gained something for what they've gifted you. They would rather you were standing there with a cardboard sign.
Okay. Sorry, Dawn, I got to stop you there. We got a minute. So hold that thought. Hold that thought. And we'll be
Gotcha.
back for part two on royalties, I guess. Royalties in South African music. All right. Just come back to part two.